Hi Daphnators, it's Daphne again with a special Halloween edition of my videos. And if you follow me on Instagram, then you know this is the second year I'm doing 31 days of homemade costumes. And I started it for the first time last year because, I don't know, it's something I always wanted to do. For the past few years, I've always done multiple Halloween costumes during the season. And I'd always said, oh, maybe next year I'll do 31. And then on October 1st of last year, I just decided, you know what, I'm gonna do it. So I just announced it with no plan. And yeah, I had amassed like a bunch of costumes over the years, so I wasn't too worried about getting all 31 costumes made or like done by then. I only had to make like a handful that year. This year, however, I had to make almost all of them from scratch. And it was a bit of a challenge. I started in September and I made about 15 then, and I made 15 this month in October. And if I haven't started by January next year, please remind me, because I never want to be under this tight of a deadline again. The way the process worked for this year is, well, every year I always keep in my notes app costumes I want to do. So I have like a big list of every time, like when I see a movie that I like or a show I enjoy, I just like take note, and then around August I will look through that list and then just like plan out like, okay, what would work for this year with my time constraint, like how easy will it be to make, and then so I'll make that list of 31 costumes. From that, I'll figure out what fabric do I already have, what fabric do I need to get, and I will sketch everything out and just try to plan it for each week, like what am I gonna do, and then after sketching I'll figure out like styling with wigs and stuff, and I'll be like, okay, what wigs do I have, what wigs do I need to get, and then I try to see which ones I can overlap wigs with, and then after that I do patterns. I figure out what patterns are similar to the others, and which luckily there were a lot of overlap this year, so I do that. And yeah, and then I get to sewing. And last year I didn't do my process videos, and this is the first year I did them, and they were not easy to do. It's pretty apparent by watching like the first few clips that I didn't get all the process footage down thoroughly. It gets a little smoother as it goes on. So for this video, it's going to be part one of the series where I show you the first half of this month and the process behind it. At the end of the video, I'm also going to show y'all some fun stuff I did in October that wasn't making costumes. So, like I said earlier, a lot of my early footage of documenting this is very spotty. And you can tell by my first demon costume because I lost all the other footage except for me making the grommets. But here's how it looks in the end and some detail shots of my makeup. My next costume was Melanie Daniels from The Birds. And I started off by cutting out my patterns for the skirt and top. For the birds, I used my Cricut to cut out paper silhouettes and just lightly tack them on to the dress and wig. For my skeleton costume, I just cut out a basic jumpsuit pattern out of black spandex fabric, and for the skeleton pattern, I used iron-on vinyl with my Cricut machine, and I just purchased the skeleton pattern off of Etsy. And did you know that not everything white is UV reactive? Because I did not, and I had to go to the art supply store to get some glow-in-the-dark paint to use under the black light. But it was all worth it in the end because I was really happy with how my black light skeleton turned out. I forgot to shoot any process footage of my Donatella Versace look, but it was just a basic stretch tank top dress, and I thought this look was more about the makeup than anything. And like everybody else this month, my biggest obsession was Squid Game, so you know I had to make a Squid Game tracksuit. So I made just a basic pattern of a jacket and sweatpants. I used my home machine to make an embroidery border for the numbers. I used my Cricut to print out iron-on vinyl for the numbers. And I bought a green Ringer baseball tee to print the numbers on. Then my next costume was Luann Platter from King of the Hill, one of my favorite cartoons. This one was just a basic tank top and bike shorts. My next costume was a Frisco's car hop waitress. For this one, I made a basic circle skirt and an apron. And I used my Cricut to make a cutout iron-on vinyl. I tried shooting on location, but this one was about to be demolished. My next costume was Phyllis Neffler from Troop Beverly Hills. So here I am cutting out the fabric. For the cape, I just draped it over my dress form and used tailor's chalk to draw out the general cape outline. For the hat, I made out a quick pattern and just ironed interfacing to the fabric for stiffness and sewed feathers to the end. For my Dazzler costume, I just used the basic jumpsuit pattern. I really love the fabric I used. It's not really accurate to the cartoon character, but I thought it would be a fun interpretation. My next look was Vivian Ward from Pretty Woman. And I made this look by just draping over my dress form and drawing where the cutouts would be. My Birth of Venus look was one of my favorite looks in this series. I used the same jumpsuit pattern as my prior ones and just used my serger to put them together and rhinestoned it. I sewed the plastic seashells on the inside of the fabric because I really liked how it looked. Rhinestoning the fabric was my favorite part because I find it to be very meditative. My next look was the iconic Nomi Malone Versace dress from my favorite movie, Showgirls. Here I am cutting out the top and skirt. It took me a while to figure out how to do the cutouts, but I figured it out by testing out fabric and making the arc 1 inch high by 1 inch wide. Then in the fabric between the cutouts, I sewed buttons. For my lamb chop costume, I just reused the skirt from my cloud look from last year. The only thing I had to make from scratch were the mittens with the fluff trim. For the top, I just used a thermal long sleeve I had laying around at home. I started out making my mermaid costume by sewing a gather in the center front and center back, and then draping it over my dress form and just pinning down the side seams. For the end of the tail, I just freehand drew it, and I sewed seams down that I put wires through. The top was a vintage bustier I had that I just glued rhinestones onto, and from the Birth of Venus costume, I reused the shells on this. I put fishing wire on the tip of the tail so I could hold it up while I skate, and it was inspired by Cher from Mermaids. For my Wilma Flintstone costume, I draped muslin over my dress form and made a pattern out of it. After cutting out the fabric from white vinyl and sewing the side seams down, I put it back on my dress form and did the cutout hem. What I loved about this vinyl fabric is that it doesn't fray at the end, so I got to have a nice clean edge for the hem and didn't have to sew it down. My last look for the first half of this series is a clown costume. I don't have any process videos because I made this jumpsuit a year ago. And for the collar, I reused the tutu I made from my Frisco's Diner waitress look. I made the hat out of metallic green construction paper and just glued a pom-pom on top. So one of the first things I went to in October for haunts was Universal Studios Hollywood Horror Nights. And the first time I went was 3 years ago, and this is the second time I've gone this year. And I highly, highly recommend you get an express pass because the first time I went, I didn't, and the lines were an hour and a half. This year I got it, and I felt like it was so worth it. Everything was like 5 minutes long, and The longest I had to wait was 15 minutes. Food wasn't that great, the cocktails were good, so if you live in LA, highly recommend. The second thing I did this month was the Tapia Brothers Corn Maze in Encino, California. They also have a pumpkin patch and it's really fun. I got lost in the corn maze and did trivia in it. It's really fun. I really love doing corn mazes, so highly recommend if you live near the valley. And that was it. I hope y'all enjoyed. And next week I'm going to post part 2 of this video where I show you what I did for the last half of the month. Yeah. And before I leave y'all, I just wanted to say I have no plans for Halloween this year, so if you have any recommendations in LA, leave them down below. I'd like to see anything haunted, fun, and not crowded. So, thanks!